I'm Liz Larson.
And I'm Bill McKenna.
And together, we created the Cognomovement system. And we'd like to welcome you to the New Life Perspectives radio show,
where we're going to be sharing with you tools, tips, and ideas that are going to change your life. This is Bill McKenna, your host today of the New Life Perspectives radio show here on UK Health Radio. We are so excited to have this show, especially today, because I'm going to be talking about something we're all going to face, which is the end, or what we think is the end, death, dying. We're going to experience the loss of our loved ones, and we're also going to go through this transition ourselves. It seems as if most people really live their lives thinking that it's not going to happen to me, right? In the earlier parts of our lives, for most people, they don't see death as a real possibility. This is why 18-year-old kids are chosen to be soldiers. This is a natural part of a person's makeup, how their brain works. So when we get kids into the Army and armed forces to fight for the country and that sort of thing, it's because on one account that, obviously they're physically able and the like, but also they don't have this thing that becomes into a person's awareness as they age. Once they, start hitting the, 60s, 70s, 80s, it becomes closer to a reality for people. Like, oh, you know what? Actually, everybody dies, and I'm going to die too. Anyway, I wanted to make this show some interesting things that you might never have heard. This show is going to be of major benefit to you and the ones you loved, both now and after they've parted. There are some wonderful things that I've learned through my association with the International Association for the Near-Death Studies. It's called IANDS, IANDS. There's a chapter probably in your town, almost anywhere in the world now. They study the near-death experience. When I say near-death experience, what I mean is that when a person dies, let's say they have a heart attack, or some other thing happens, and they literally are flatlined. They literally die, and then, either they're shocked back to life or they come back. And what that experience does to them and their perspectives. They are able to have so much more in the way of perspective than your average person. There are certain things that happen when you enter into another dimension, and that's what they do. When you leave your body, you enter into another dimension. Now, I had a bunch of different things that I kind of wanted to bring forward that going to be beneficial. And the first one is the regrets of people who are dying. These are not people who have had a near-death experience. They're the people that are on the verge of death. And there was some study done of that, and they had some certain commonalities. And the reason that these are of value is to avoid the pitfalls. If you're listening to this, you still have your body and you're still here. So take heed and listen to what these people have said. And the first thing is that they regretted spending so much of their time at work and not with family or enjoying themselves. The second regret was that they didn't keep in contact with their friends as they aged. They let the relationships disintegrate through, not being in contact. So you might want to consider reaching out, those relationships alive. It's easier to do today than ever with all the methods of communications and finding your friends. The other one that really stands out of the regrets of the dying is that they wish they didn't spend their life in fear. Fear that saying something would bring a wrath upon them or destroy a relationship or something, not saying the truth. So that is something that we can all start doing today, is letting go of our fears and starting to say the truth. And also our fears of like not reaching out and doing the thing that you really wanted to do, but you didn't do it because you were afraid. Consider an easy method of getting over this is, what's the worst case scenario, right? If I do this and then that happens, let yourself play out the worst case scenario and see if you could accept the worst case scenario for yourself. Like, oh, okay, well, if I do this, then this will happen. Okay, then allow yourself to be there and see how it goes for you. Are you actually okay? With accepting the worst case scenario, then what happens is that we lose our fear. We lose our fear of it, and we're able to do things now that we couldn't do before because we're afraid. One of the things, moving to the next point that I wanted to make sure to make for everyone, is that the big surprise for everyone is that when they die, that they are surprised. Like, let's say, for example, so many of the people that I work with that have had near-death experiences, they end up like crashing their car, right? And there they are. All of a sudden, what happens is they find themselves outside of their body looking down at the accident. They may find themselves beside it, looking down at the body. And the very first thing that happens is they find themselves emotionally kind of divorced from their body. Like, wow, that's all mangled. Is that me? That doesn't even look like me. So the first thing is that they're like not so interested in going back to that physical body, number one. But number two is that they notice that they actually can feel what everybody feels around them. The ambulance driver, the other people that are in the accident, that are around the accident, the other observers, they can actually feel what they're feeling. It's kind of an amazing thing. And especially for loved ones. Now, when this happens, they are shocked that they're not dead. They're like, oh my God, I'm right here. I'm right next to you and you can't see me. It's like they're trying to get your attention. You know, they're saying that they're trying to get the person's attention next to them and say, hey, no, I'm okay. I'm right here. You know, but because they're in another frequency range, the person can't see them, right? They can see a physical body, which is actually frequency-wise dense, right? Material matter is dense frequency-wise, but their spirit entity, whatever you want to call it, they can't see it physically. So I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that that was really the case, that when you leave your body, you're like, oh my God, I'm not dead. I'm fine. One person that I had worked with said, it was like imagining, you know, that you had 100,000 needles stuck in your body, and as soon as you left the body, that it was this incredible freeing feeling that it is absolutely freeing. There was a study done by I think it was in Germany, not sure, but it was, or Switzerland. It was a person who was taking pictures of people at their very moment of transition. They took pictures of the faces of people as they were actually in their transition. They worked with hospice people and said, okay, I'm going to do this, where they take these pictures. And the amazing thing that came out of that study was the faces of people at the very last moment this person had caught the faces, and they looked in absolute ecstasy. You imagine, imagine all those millions of needles being removed, and then all of a sudden you're free. And it's like, feels so good, right? So I thought that was a very interesting study that took place. When we leave the body, typically we end up going, now there are many after death experience, but one that's very typical is that a light, like a tunnel, appears, and you end up going up through the light, and you have what's called a life review. Now, in this life review, it is every single experience that you've had, and you not only are having the experience as you, but you also get to have the experience as the other person. So let's say that I had some joyful experience, like, really heartfelt, joyful experience. I'm going to get to be the other person that I experienced this with, and get to actually be in their body and feel their feelings and everything of how that affected them. Now, you also have this other interesting, like a third party. So yeah, I'm me, I'm you, and then I'm the third party as well. So you have this interesting dynamic that's a real experience dynamic. It's hard to even imagine here while you're in this body, like having three perspectives at once. But the net effect of it, when people come back from the life review, most are permanently altered. And when I say permanently altered, I mean that they're permanently altered because they have a different perspective. And one of those perspectives is that it wasn't what they thought, meaning their life, the way they interpreted people and what happened. It's not what they thought. They became the other person in a conflict. And when they became the other person, they could feel what the other person actually felt, and that person's truth. And most of the time what they say is that it just wasn't what I thought. I thought the person was bad, evil, against me in some way. And it simply wasn't true. It simply wasn't true. They had some issue from before. They had an issue earlier in the day that you don't know about. They have a fear, and that fear is the way they interpret life. All of these different things play into how the other person acted, but it wasn't malicious. It wasn't against me. So this is kind of a big thing with the life review and that process. There's more to this. And I'm going to get back to that right after this break, where we hear from our sponsor, the UK Health Radio Network. And let's hear from them, and we'll be right back. All right. Thank you. Now, we're back again. We're talking about all things related to our passing, our relatives passing, and some new information for you that was going to help you and also your loved ones here and the ones that have already passed over. When we enter this world, we enter and exit the same way, and that is through light. So when we exit this world, if you remember, in the last part of this interview, is that the light is that tunnel that we go into. Now, when we're born, before we're born, we're conceived, and we are actually conceived in light. Now, they've actually had scientific tests where they have the microscope on the moment of conception, when the sperm and the egg come together, and that moment of conception, under a microscope, there is, you guessed it, a flash of light, a flash of light. And when you enter this world, if you imagine you're going down a dark tunnel into the light. So we also know something else today that we didn't know back in the day. Only the mystics knew it, and we didn't have scientific proof of it. But today we do, and that is that when you divide out a molecule, you go, into the nucleus and, further and further, smaller and smaller components of a cell, you'll get down to something that scientists call a quark, this quantum particle. And when they go down into that, guess what it is? Light. You, at your very smallest particle, are light. You came from the light, you are the light, and you go back to the light. So this is a really interesting thing that is now come back to us through science, and it's no longer just this mystic belief. One of the wonderful teachers that I had helped me with some understandings about what happens to us on both sides of the veil, and with the transition that we go through. Now, the first thing I want to point out is that our life has one thing in common throughout it, and that's change. We're constantly faced with change. And to the degree that we can accept change is to the degree which we will have an easy transition with the big change. Death is simply just another change. How do I handle change in my life? Can I accept change? Well, if you're really good at accepting change, then you're probably going to have a real easy transition. If you're fighting the whole way in your life, then you might find yourself fighting in death as well. The state of mind that we are in when we cross has absolutely everything to do with what we experience on the other side. What do I mean by that? Well, in certain teachings where what they call the Hermetic teachings, and Hermetic teachings are are very ancient. They're kind of predate Christianity, the Muslim beliefs. It predates so many of the different religions. So you find that these teachings are underlying to many of the others because of it predating. And that is as above, so below, as within, so without. And this is these teachings, right, is whatever we hold on earth is held in heaven. That'd be another one from the Christian tradition that you might have heard. But it all kind of goes right along that same Hermetic teaching line. But in practical terms, if we are in a state where we feel really good as we are crossing over, then our state of mind on the other side creates a wonderful experience. If we're very fearful of going to hell or something like that, then we end up creating a unwanted reality on the other side. So what do I mean by that? Well, in order to better understand this, I'll just talk a little bit about dimensions. The third dimension right here is this physical dimension that we're in. And with this physical dimension, we have a physical body. When we're here in this physical body, it is actually super dense. Now, there's a huge benefit to having a body, and that means that I am separate from you. I have a certain separateness of my feelings from your feelings. Now, as we are here in this third dimension, we have something called time. And with time, what happens is that I think something, and it may take a while for it to happen. I think that, for example, I want to get a cup of coffee. And so I think, okay, I'm gonna go over to the coffee maker. I'm gonna fill it up. I'm gonna, take the little capsule. And I'm gonna put it in there, and I'm gonna get the cup and make sure it's clean, so on and so forth. There's a process and there's time. This is what it's like in the third dimension. In the fifth dimension, when we lose our body in the fifth dimension, whatever we think happens instantaneously. I think it, and boom, it's there. Well, that sounds really cool and everything, except if you don't have very good management of your emotions. If I think something fearful, I will tend to create that instantly. And with the absence of time, whatever I'm thinking, I don't have the benefit of time to change my mind, right? I have a little bit of time to say, do I want the cup? Maybe not, maybe, I don't know. Do I feel like it? So I can kind of think it. But if I'm locked in on a particular subject, then what happens, and there's no time, then I'm locked up on the subject, right? If I hate you, I don't have room for another thought. So here we have time to consider other things, other thoughts. There's a huge benefit to being on Earth in this physical third dimension with time. Now, how can we help people that are crossing over? And the answer is that when a person is dying, their hearing is the very last thing to go. This is scientifically proven that is going to be the last thing that goes. Even the person in a coma, hearing is the last thing to go. So when you have somebody that's dying, to tell them all the wonderful things that they've done. Thank them for everything that they said. Thank them for all the things that they did. Tell them about the expanding positive impact of them being here on earth. That when they helped you, that helped you to help someone else, or that helped you to have more courage for something, or be able to forgive, or whatever be the case. But when this person, with everyone that can possibly do it, is told all of the wonderful things about them, that they helped, that they made a difference, that they were wonderful, that they are loved. When this happens, what the person that is dying is put into a very positive state of mind. Imagine for a second that everybody you knew that felt great about you or something you had done and came to your bedside and told you all of the wonderful things about you, and that how you made a difference in their lives and how much they loved you, and that they were so happy that they got to have this experience with you here. Imagine getting a little taste of that and how it would be. You would feel really good. It's like getting, let's say you've got, 50 phone calls and everybody's telling you how great and everything, how they loved you so much, and that you really had a positive impact. Well, that puts you into a positive state of mind as you cross over. And as you're crossing over, because you have this positive state of mind, then you're going to have a really positive experience. If we cross over in a fearful state of mind, or let's say not feeling so great about our life, we tend to create that as well. It's really super important to let go, leave the baggage here, forgive, because what is bound on earth is bound over there. So whatever you can do to let go is a great service to yourself. The service to others when they're passing, to give them this, what I call the new last rites, which is to thank the person for everything you can possibly think of. Thank their ears for listening. Thank their mouth for saying. Thank their eyes for seeing you. Thank all of it. Everything that you can imagine. The old last rites were kind of, let's say, opposed to this. They've changed them a bit, but the last rites in certain traditions were telling the person that, your sins are all going to be forgiven, and it's all about your sins, right? And that, and if you put a person's attention, right, on the thing that was negative, right, their sins, right, they're going to have a different experience when they cross over. When I had this another, just to illustrate this point of stuck thoughts, I had a teacher who for 40 years ran the Berkeley Psychic Institute. They had several schools out there, and they teach people about intuition and development and, communications with departed and that sort of thing. Anyway, many years ago, I had a conversation, and she said, she had checked on people would come in and she would do kind of a reading or, a mediumship for someone. And she would check on a person, let's say 30 years ago, and that person was stuck, stuck on a thought. It's kind of like here on earth. When you have an experience and you have a looping thought, right? Well, this person did this, and I never should have got fired, blah, 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 right? It's like, imagine you have a TV set and you're just looking at this one channel and replaying that one video. Well, It's the same on the other side. So she would go back, 30 years later, and the person was still looking at the same show. So this is something to just be aware of. And changing our minds here is a little bit easier. So, one of the ways that we can help a person on the other side, they've already passed over. Well, that is on this side to think about all of the positive things that they've done for us. If you have somebody in your life, that's passed away now, and the biggest gift that you can give to them is not your grief, but it is the remembering of the positive. Remember all the wonderful things they did. Remember the times they made you laugh. Remember the wonderful things. And with this, what happens is they get to experience it again. But remember, because they don't have a physical body, it is like exaggerated. The joy that you feel when you remember those wonderful things they did and the laughter, it's multiplied 100-fold on the other side. You're creating explosions of joy for them on the other side. So remember, when I started the show today, I talked about when people first die and they can feel everything that everyone else feels. Well, it's not just the moment of death right after, it is for all time. If you think about the person, then they will be there. Everything is instantaneous. So those real positive thoughts about them are such a gift. On the other side, from their perspective, they're like, hey, I'm great. Well, I'm so great. I want you to feel great too. I don't want you to have this grief. So letting go of our grief is really a super positive thing for them as well. Hang on, I'm going to be right back. We have to listen to our word from our sponsors, UK Health Radio. Thank you. Check it out. Welcome back. All right, this is a very different episode, as you're probably gathering here. You might want to go back and listen to it again because it's kind of jam-packed with information. These are all available at UK Health Radio in the archive for New Life Perspectives radio show. Now, on to some other subjects related to the death and dying. A lot of people notice that about 72 hours prior to a person's death, that they become kind of aware. Sometimes 48 hours, but they kind of spring back into an awareness. They might have been like Alzheimer's and that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden, they'll be like totally with it. And they'll be looking at you like, hey, Joe, thank you so much for all you've done. I really appreciate it, and it's been wonderful. And then, boom, back offline. So this type of thing happens. Sometimes it's faster than that, sometimes not. But there's actually really interesting scientific proof. Now, some of you know about the BioWell. If you don't know about it, you can look it up online. This device can measure energy. It measures the meridians in your body. It measures your energy centers, and it can tell what state all of your energy system is in every component of it. So I have one and been through the training and that sort of thing. Some of the research that's been done with this amazingly found about that time, about 72 hours prior, what happens is that all of the energy centers in the body get really big and aligned. There's a spike in their energy and an alignment. And it's almost like clockwork that they will pass about 72 hours later. And what they're doing, right, without knowing, but this is the natural process, is they're gathering up all of their energy to leave. Now, when a person dies, a lot of times they go through this death rattle. And this can be very disturbing to watch somebody going through the death rattle where their breath becomes really and they look like they're suffering. I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that certainly many people go through a suffering process during death, but for the majority of people that die, they are already physically out of the body before the body actually dies. So when they'll be close by, but they're right outside of their body. When your consciousness leaves the body, your awareness leaves your body, what happens is you don't feel pain. So when they're doing the gurgling and that sort of thing, many people will, because they feel like the person's suffering, they will end up trying to give them more painkillers. And those painkillers end up quickening the death. Now, the reason that I mention this is there is that drugged effect. When someone has that drugged effect, it affects the consciousness of the spirit. So it becomes a little bit confused on the other side. You can imagine, right? You're all looped up on morphine, right? Well, it makes your transition a little bit harder on the other side. You may not have the body, but you're still a little, what I would call intoxicated. So if you can be aware that the person is really not in the pain, that's just a natural process, it may make things a little easier on the other side. When we go through this process, I think it's important to realize that it's one big cycle. Birth, life, death. Birth, life, death. Now, some people say, oh, I don't believe in reincarnation or whatever. Well, the science now is pointing to that. There have been so many cases that are children who have come in to this world, and very early on, before the age of 5, they remember that they died in a fire and in this particular town at this particular time, or they remember that they were killed in a war and that this was their name, and so on and so forth. There have been so many hypnosis regressions or children that had a remembering and actually end up going to the town with their parents, and they say, I was Mr. Buchanan and I lived at 123 Main Street, and I was I worked as this, and that sort of thing. And they go back and they can actually verify it. And there are stories abounding for this. But it only makes sense. It only makes sense because, we're here in this place learning a lesson. Ultimately, that lesson is how to love with no strings attached. So you're probably not going to be learning that in just one lifetime. So you've actually have to go through this many times because you are having experiences. Now, these experiences you pre-planned. before you ever got here. There's a great book by Anita Moorjani. It's called Dying to Be Me. And there are many other great books that you can find. Great resource, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. You can go there, and there's so many books. In their annual conference, they have a whole book section, which is massive. And these are all about near death, actual death experiences. So before we get here, we actually plan everything out. Her wonderful way that it was put was before you get here, you're given a bunch of packages to deliver. And then once you're born, you get amnesia that, I was to deliver this package to you. And these packages could be packages of love, betrayal, whatever might be the case, to help another person grow, or they're giving a package to you for that purpose. When you are going through your life and you're having all of these experiences, just notice what's going on. And you can ask yourself, the simple question is, what is it that I have yet to learn? Or what service was I to be to this person? They're not in your life by accident. They're not. Your life and their life have come into contact in this particular time, in this particular place. There are literally 2 billion galaxies, 2 trillion galaxies that NASA knows about right now. And within each galaxy is billions upon billions of planets. So you have billions and billions of planets times trillions of galaxies. And here you are on this planet Earth, in this particular place, in this particular time, having this particular experience with this person. These people are typically very, very close to you. They're going to be in the same company as you. They're going to be maybe living in the same house. They might be your next door neighbor, but they're close to you. And these are the ones that you're here learning lessons with them. Either they're helping you or you're helping them, either way. And ask yourself the simple question, what is it that I haven't learned yet? Or what was I to help the other person with? It might make it a little easier, smoother transition for you. Lastly, and this is a fun one here, related to death and dying and your field around you and information. And this tip is, again, from the people that have experienced death, that some of them have come back and said, I could actually see when they were in the state where they no longer had a body, they were out of their body, they could see other people and their field around them. And in the field around them, what they saw was their hopes, desires, fears, whatever it might be, actually materializing. So, for example, if you begin to think about a car, you're like, I think I want a car. Well, particular make and model and color and these sorts of things. What'll happen is it appears kind of fuzzy out in your auric field. Like, imagine if you put your arms out and that's, whatever it is, 5-6 feet space around you, that it'll start to materialize in another dimension. Thoughts become things. And the more a person thinks about a thing, then what happens is it becomes denser and denser. This goes with what we want and what we don't want. So what happens here is it becomes denser and denser and moves closer and closer to you. So My point is that there is materialization in the physical dimension, and there is a materialization in the other dimension as well. Thoughts become things. So whatever you're thinking and feeling, be aware that that's what's showing up. It's already showing up in your field. Now, we do have a quick last thing is if you are interested, have something called Cogno Quantum. You can read more about it at cognomovement.com. That's cognomovement.com. And that is all about manifestation and that field and the manifestations that we had just talked about. Hope everybody enjoyed this romp through the dimensions, and hopefully you got something interesting out of it. If you like this, I'll do more of them. Just let me know. We have many other episodes at UK Health Radio. Simply go there to UK Health Radio and look up the New Life Perspectives radio show. There's all kinds of different interviews there for you. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.